I'd worked as the groundskeeper for the Menendez family for years. My job was simple: keep the gardens pristine, shape the hedges, and remain invisible when the family was around. They were wealthy, powerful, the kind of family that held a magnetic, uncomfortable presence over everyone in the neighborhood. Even I felt it, though I was just the help, a silent shadow moving around their perfectly manicured lawns. Jose Menendez was a tall, intense man, his eyes cold and hard, like granite. Kitty, his wife, was quiet, graceful, but there was always something fragile, almost haunted about her gaze. She would wave sometimes if she saw me, but her smile never reached her eyes. Then there were the sons, Lyle and Eric. They weren't around much, but when they were, it was always Eric who lingered. He seemed withdrawn, burdened. I remember one afternoon when I caught him by the pool, staring into the water like he was looking for something he'd lost there. I'd asked him if he was all right, but he only mumbled something cryptic about shadows in the house. I brushed it off, but something about his tone stayed with me. The night it happened, the air felt different. A storm was rolling in, fierce and electric, and I was finishing up some work in the equipment shed as the rain began to fall. Thunder cracked overhead, and lightning flashed, lighting up the mansion's massive windows. Through the flashes, I saw two figures moving inside, shadows shifting across the walls. My heart jumped, and I thought for a moment that it was just my imagination. Then came a sound that cut through the storm, a gunshot, sharp and unmistakable. I froze, my breath caught in my throat, as another shot echoed through the rain. Panicking, I stumbled out of the shed and into my house next door, reaching my bedroom window just in time to see the front door of the mansion open. Two figures slipped out into the storm, heads down, moving in eerie sync as they disappeared into the darkness. Lightning struck again, illuminating them briefly, and I saw their faces, Lyle and Eric, eyes blank, expressions empty, like they were in a trance. And then they were gone, vanished into the storm without a single glance back. Across the street I spotted my neighbor, peering out his window with wide, terrified eyes. Our gazes met for a fleeting moment, and I saw in his expression the same horror that was tearing through me. We both knew somehow that something unspeakable had happened. The next morning the police swarmed the mansion, and the news broke. Jose and Kitty Menendez had been found dead, and their own sons had been arrested. I thought that would be the end of it, that with the family gone, the mansion would fall silent, the horror buried with the tragedy. But something lingered in that house, a darkness that felt alive, growing stronger each night. It started small. I'd be walking home late, and I'd feel eyes on me, an oppressive gaze pressing down on my shoulders. The mansion's windows, empty and dark, seemed to watch me, like the house itself was waiting for something. Then, one night, as I was passing by, I saw it. Kitty's silhouette, drifting from one window to another, her movement slow and eerie. Her face was blank, hollow, as if she'd left some part of herself behind. My blood ran cold, and I stumbled home, locking my door behind me, but the unease followed me inside. Then came the dreams. Every night, I found myself wandering through the mansion's hallways in my sleep, the walls breathing with an unseen, malevolent energy. I could hear voices, hushed and angry, like the remnants of old arguments. Sometimes Eric's voice would come through, soft and fearful, as though he was hiding from something. Other times I'd hear Jose's voice, cold and venomous, murmuring things that made my skin crawl. One night I woke drenched in sweat after a particularly vivid nightmare. In the dream I'd been in the mansion's living room, staring at a pool of blood that seeped from the carpet, dark and endless. I heard it then, a faint, whispering voice, calm yet terrifying, saying, "We're still here." My heart pounded as I sat up, convincing myself it was only a nightmare. But when I looked out my bedroom window, I saw a shadow standing in the garden, just beyond the hedges, watching my house. The hauntings became relentless. In my own home, doors would swing open in the dead of night, cold drafts cutting through even when every window was closed tight. Footsteps echoed down my hallway, slow and deliberate, as though someone was pacing just outside my room. Sometimes I'd hear the faintest sound of a scream, so familiar it sent chills down my spine. It was as if an echo from the Menendez mansion had attached itself to me, following me wherever I went. One evening, I glanced out my window and saw my neighbor standing at his own window, staring at the mansion with a haunted look. He must have been feeling it too, the pull of the shadows, the weight of something unspeakable. He was as pale as a ghost, his eyes fixed on the dark windows of the Menendez house, as though he could see something there that I couldn't. I tried to call out to him, but the words caught in my throat. Then, one stormy night, I saw the light. It was faint, barely a glow coming from the parents' bedroom. I watched, frozen, as it grew brighter, casting strange shadows across the room. For a moment, I thought I saw all of them, Jose, Kitty, Lyle, and Eric, standing together, their faces distorted by sadness and something far darker. And then I realized there was something else, a shape behind them, something that wasn't human, a dark, looming presence that seemed to wrap itself around the family, trapping them in place. After that night, I began seeing the figures more frequently. Shadows flitted from window to window, moving even when there was no light. Once, I saw Kitty's face pressed against the glass, her eyes wide with a silent, desperate plea. I couldn't shake the feeling that she was trying to reach out, trapped in some kind of eternal torment. The final straw came one night when I heard a knock on my front door. It was late, past midnight, and the neighborhood was silent. Heart pounding, I opened the door, only to find no one there. But as I turned back, I felt a rush of cold air sweep past me, and a faint, sorrowful whisper brushed against my ear. It was a voice I recognized, Eric's, soft and filled with regret. "Please, help us." Panicked, I slammed the door and backed away, but the whispers didn't stop. They seemed to come from every corner of the room, swirling around me in a cacophony of anguish. The shadows in my house grew darker, creeping along the walls, stretching out like they were reaching for me. I shut myself in my room, trembling as the voices faded, but I knew it was only a temporary reprieve. Desperate for answers, I went to the local priest and told him everything. He listened quietly, his face growing pale as I recounted the horrors. He told me that tragedies like this leave scars, not just on people, but on places. "Some spirits can't find peace," he said, "especially when their lives end in such pain. They linger, caught between worlds, searching for something they may never find." He offered to bless my home, but I knew deep down it wouldn't be enough. The darkness from the Menendez mansion had already seeped into my bones. One night, I felt a strange compulsion to return to the mansion. I don't know what drove me, but I found myself at the front gate, staring up at the towering structure. The windows were dark, yet I felt as if 100 eyes were watching me, waiting. I took a step closer, and then another, until I was standing just outside the front door. From inside, I heard it, the familiar sound of footsteps, soft yet deliberate, moving toward the door. The air grew colder, so cold I could see my breath misting in front of me. My heart pounded as the door creaked open, revealing nothing but darkness within. And then, a whisper drifted out, filled with such sorrow it made my skin crawl. "We're still here," it said, and I knew in that moment that the Menendez family was trapped, bound to the mansion by the horror of their final moments. I stumbled back, turning to run, but something held me there, an invisible force keeping me rooted in place. I felt their eyes on me, pleading, their pain reaching out like icy fingers, pulling me into their endless nightmare. When I finally broke free and ran, I could still hear them, their whispers following me all the way home. Now, I don't pass by the mansion at night. I don't look at the windows, don't listen for the voices that still haunt me. But I know they're there, trapped in a place where shadows never die, waiting for someone to set them free. And I know, somehow, that they'll never rest.